we need to come to understand that just because it's a small dog and it can do a lot less harm with a big attitude than a big dog can, it's still not okay. Welcome to episode 26 of the Pawdoption Guide podcast. I'm your host, Bethany Muir, and this is your one-stop shop for the knowledge and advice you need to adopt and integrate that beautiful rescue dog of your dreams. I'm going to start this week's episode off with a little note to my listeners. I have decided recently to change things up with the podcast in terms of the frequency. So I have, up until now, been pretty much posting an episode every week, or airing one every week, and I now plan to do it bi-weekly. So every other week, there'll be a new episode from here on out. Just feel like for consistency's sake, for the most part, I was able to do an episode every week, but sometimes it was real tight, and it definitely was harder with doing some bigger episode projects, like some of my recent ones where I was collaborating or had multiple people sharing accounts. It just made it a little bit more difficult to get in every week with those episodes. So in order to give myself the freedom to be more creative with my episodes, I'm going to be bringing them to you every other week, and I hope you don't mind that. Let me know if that's something that disappoints you, and we can see if that changes my mind, but otherwise you can expect them every other week on Thursday. Today's topic is something I've really wanted to talk about for weeks, and I'm just finally getting around to. I was initially inspired for it by watching my neighbors, many of which got a small dog during the pandemic. And so, on my little street, there's 4 neighbors I can think of that I would talk to, and they got, like one has a poodle cross, 2 have chihuahuas, 1 has a Frenchie. And I've just noticed a lot from watching their behaviors over time that there's some major differences between people who have big dogs or dog owners who have medium to large dogs and dog owners who have small dogs. And I thought we could really stand to talk about that. It's something that I definitely noticed as a vet tech. When you work in clinic, there are certainly a lot of small dogs with big attitudes, and they can be just as scary as the big dogs. And it was a lot less likely to get a really large, unruly dog than it was to get a small, unruly dog. And with my neighbors, I've just been noticing, especially as they're getting their second dog or their third dog, that those behaviors maybe are even emphasized with that additional pet, in that it's sometimes not bringing out the best in their other pets as well. So one neighbor, they had like a terrier mix, and it was really well behaved. I would say really well behaved, just quite likely to follow its owners. They walk with it off leash quite frequently, and it's very happy to just trail them, and they bring a ball, and that keeps it really engaged with them on their walks, and they're very likely to just be hanging out with it off leash in their front yard, just very casual people. And they got this poodle cross, and things have really changed for them since. Their walks are no longer quite so laissez-faire. Their poodle cross is quite a big personality, very barky, definitely has some leash reactivity toward, people, places, things, and dogs. And so their walks have changed a lot. And that other dog who was previously so well behaved is a lot more reactive and alert and more misbehaved than it used to be. And, even even if you walk by their house, you used to never hear any noise from their house. And now the two dogs just barking their heads off at anyone who passes by. So certainly that's a huge change for that household. And I feel for them because I too know what it's like to get a second dog that's maybe less well behaved and have to work your way back from that and try to ensure that your other dog doesn't take on those behaviors. At the same time, they've gotten both their dogs as puppies, and mine were both adults as I got them as rescues. And then we have a neighbor up the street who has a Chihuahua who's like the third dog in the household. And yeah, that dog is, not going on walks with the other two dogs. It's very noticeably they're choosing to separate them for walks. And that may be a size thing, like the one dog doesn't have as much stamina as the other dogs. But I think also it's probably a behavior thing that they do tend to bark a lot together. You walk by the house, they all go crazy at the door. And they're often like letting their dogs off leash out front, but yet they don't have the recall that they need on their dogs. So luckily they're small, they don't get away too fast, and they care for them. But I can tell that these households aren't necessarily in control of their dogs, and their dogs are often the ones in control. And this makes me think a lot about something called Napoleon Syndrome. And, if you think about Napoleon, he was a small guy who overcompensated for his size with his push for power and control, and conquering everything in sight. But it's basically small dog syndrome is the same idea as that. It's a small dog that is unruly or aggressive or territorial and basically owns you and owns the house. Like, they take control of the situation. They are the leaders. That's how they see themselves. And they're just ready to conquer, just like Napoleon. And this is not something your dog is born with. It's something we as owners or as past owners, so if you've found a dog in a rescue that has this kind of small dog syndrome, that small dog, big attitude kind of thing, this is what we as owners have taught our dogs. And I have not been a small dog owner. I've only had, I've had beagles, so kind of medium dogs and larger dogs than that. I've never had a really small dog, but I've had so much experience with them in the vet clinic and through, some work with my Pawdoption guide business, but also, even helped a friend who had a dachshund, and the dog was just ruling the roost and was really territorial of one person in the house and just wasn't on its best behavior. And they had that dog for, I think, just over a year, but they just knew that they wanted more from this dog. They could get more out of it. And that's when they sought my help. And it was really great to see there's just some simple tweaks that it took in order to get this dog really living a happy life where it knew what it needed to do on a daily basis, and the owner was in control and could feel like they had a harmonious household again, that their dog was in sync with them. So I've certainly had some experience there, and time and time again, I see that it's really common that these small dogs have big attitudes. And we need to come to understand that just because it's a small dog and it can do a lot less harm with a big attitude than a big dog can, it's still not okay. These dogs can lead better lives, and your household can be much happier if your dog is responding to you and looking to you for leadership. And so there's a few key things that are really going wrong here on a regular basis that are creating the small dog syndrome. So here are the 3 biggest mistakes that small dog owners make. One is babying or humanizing their dog. having a small dog gives you that ability to easily pick them up all the time or carry them around everywhere, to put them from here to there instead of actually requiring them to do something of their own free will. And by doing that with our small dogs, we really create this like lack of separation between us as the owner and between them. So they start to become really territorial because they think they're like one with us, because they're always by our side. They're always in our arm. They're always here. They're always there. They're always on your lap. You are them. They are you. Like, they don't really see the difference, and they spend so much time with you that it can often create separation anxiety when they're not with you. This anxiety because they don't really understand how to hold their own because they're so used to being attached to your hip. So, it feeds into that separation anxiety. It feeds into territorial behavior, but it also feeds into stubborn dog behavior because they're used to you doing everything for them. So, for instance, if it's really cold outside and it just snowed or it just rained and you're like, oh, I'm going to carry the dog out and put them down on the grass instead of encouraging them to walk across the path or walk across the deck or wherever they need to go in order to get to where they have to bathroom or be. If you're always doing those things for them, then if there's ever a scenario where you're asking them to do it on their own, they're much more likely to be like, no, I don't got to do that. You do that for me. What are you talking about? This is not how we do it. And, that's where a lot of people will say, like, my dog doesn't like the snow. My dog doesn't like this. And certainly there's some small dogs who just don't like bad weather, and that's just inherent. But to some degree, this stubborn behavior can just kind of fester out of always doing things for our dogs instead of just encouraging them to be independent beings within our household. Babying, humanizing your dog, baby talk to them all the time, that kind of talk doesn't set you up as a leader, right? It may be sweet, and sometimes your dog might like it. Like, dogs often enjoy the high-pitched voice, but it's more for play and for excitement. So you also might be encouraging that behavior regularly out of your dog rather than a calm, content dog where you're using your calm, content voice with them. That can kind of lead to that as well. Another big mistake that small dog owners make is just a lack of obedience training. And I don't think that, of course, this isn't across the board. This is with these dogs that we're seeing the small dog big attitude. I think that for the most part, people start out with great intentions. They want to train their dog to be well-mannered, and oftentimes when they have small dogs, they want to be able to take that dog wherever they go. They want them to come on errands with them. They want them to travel with them. But what ends up happening is that we baby them, or we look at them as, oh, they're so cute, they're so sweet, look at what they're doing, even though it might be naughty, it's cute. And we kind of just lose the consistency with the small dogs because, it's not as necessary as it is with big dogs. It just isn't. If the small dog decides to not listen to you, the consequence is a lot less big, for the small stuff, right? Like, if you tell the dog to get off of you because it jumped up and it doesn't listen, well, it didn't hurt you, and it's not hurting you, so it's not a big deal. But if big dog did that, you'd be like, whoa, lady, get control of your dog. How dare you let your dog jump up on me, right? And same with leash manners. If the little dog's pulling at the end of the leash, not as big a deal because it's not going to pull your arm off. It's not going to send you in the wrong direction. It's not going to lead you into trouble. You can control it in terms of, like, you can handle that resistance on the leash because it's a small dog. Well, with a big dog, that's unacceptable because you would be pulled in whatever direction, right? So I think it's more that we'll often start out with the intention of training our dogs with that obedience, but we just kind of lose that consistency because it's not as necessary. So if you're just, maybe not as focused on the training and it just doesn't, you have any resistance, sometimes that little dog wins out because it's just not as high a priority for you. And it doesn't have to be, because you can manage. You can literally still go on your walk with your dog that pulls you the entire time, because it doesn't hurt your hand the same way a big dog would if that was the case. Or it doesn't put you in danger, because at the end of the day, yeah, they're just pulling at the end of the leash, but I'm still just doing fine. If you're sitting here listening to this and going, yeah, that's my small dog, that's how our walks go, then don't be embarrassed by your dog's behavior on leash anymore. You can ditch your fears and gain control today with my Tools, Aids, and Techniques to Walk Your Dog with Confidence mini course. It's absolutely free, and you just have to head on over to my website at pawdoptionguide.com/walk your dog with confidence mini course. I'll leave the link in the show notes. And if you're ready to enjoy walks again, handle distractions with ease, and feel proud of your rescue dog, then grab this video course, sit back and relax, and start getting ready to instantly make progress with your dog's leash skills. And the third mistake that small dog owners make is they don't set boundaries. And this, again, really goes back to the babying or humanizing as well. But, when you don't set boundaries with your dog, they don't understand who the leader is. There's just a lack of leadership in the household, and wherever you go with your dog, they don't know who to look to because you don't ever ask anything of them. So setting boundaries is something you can do just by limiting freedoms for your dog. Understand that those things are privileges that your dog should earn with good behavior. Anyone can choose whatever they want to do with their dog, if they want them to be on the furniture or not. But I highly recommend that when you first get your dog, you don't just let them go all over the furniture or sleep in the bed with you. They should be earning those things with good behavior, with consistency, and being a well-mannered dog. If you let a dog who is ruling the roost have access to furniture at all times, and they just decide, I just love sitting at the front window looking at the dogs and people who walk by, and anytime they walk by, I'm going to just bark excessively at them, well, you've created that monster. You let the dog have whatever freedom it wanted, and that's what it chose to do with it. And a lot of little dogs are going to choose to do that. Most dogs are going to get into a little bit of trouble just observing out the window for how many hours a day, right? So it's really important to set boundaries, because you can reduce bad behaviors like that from occurring, and you're more likely to get bad behavior like that out of a dog who thinks that they own the place. And another way you can really set some boundaries in your household is by reducing where you feed your pet. So lots of small dog owners will just share their human food with their dog on their lap. They think it's cute that they have such a close bond, and they'll cuddle, and your owner's having a snack, so why not share some popcorn or chips with the dog? It feels like a bonding moment. But unfortunately, it's also just feeding into this idea that your dog does what you do, and you're just humanizing them, right? That they're on the same level as you. And although you might have a really strong emotional connection and they are your family member, I don't disagree with that. Amidst all that, there still needs to be some boundaries so that they look to you for leadership when it's important, and that they're not the ones deciding how to greet people who come in the door, right? By tearing on over and jumping up at them or barking at them, or by, having to be territorial when someone decides to come sit down beside you on the couch because, hey, I'm always sitting on this person's lap. This is our couch. We bond here. You're not allowed here, right? There's a reason these dogs have those thoughts and feelings, and it's because we fed into them and we've literally created them. So all of these mistakes feed into one another and help to create that small dog with a big attitude. And so never fear, there are simple ways to curb those behaviors. And you might understand how we can just do the opposite of some of these things whilst still being really loving and caring towards our small dogs. No matter what, you're still more likely to pick up your small dog than you are to pick up your large dog. And that doesn't have to completely go away. It's about being selective and consistent so your dog gets a consistent message in which they can learn from. If they're getting mixed signals all the time, like, oh, you really don't like it when I run and greet people at the door with barking and all this, but I thought I was supposed to protect this house. Like, that's what I do 24/7 when I'm walking across the back of the couch, looking out the window, scanning for new faces outside. They come to learn those things, right? So they feel confused when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I really don't want you barking at the neighbors, or I really don't want you barking at the people coming in the front door. Well, where do they get that from? So how can we curb these behaviors? Well, one, we can treat our dog like a dog. We need to stop carrying them around everywhere and give them more independence and encourage that well-mannered, calm behavior from them. So use a leash to guide them to do all these things that you might have previously done for them or carried them to. And encourage that independence from you so that they can see you're both separate entities. They don't need to protect you like that because you're in control, because you got the leash after all. Then we can go back to the basics and require some manners from them. So do some obedience training on that leash. Have them on leash all the time in the house so that you can correct those times where they would have been barking on top of the couch by looking out the window, or where they would have run straight to the door to greet someone with a bark and a jump. We can correct those things and encourage the proper behavior by having that control of them with the leash. And that even goes to, encouraging them to stay beside you while you're on a walk so that they're not leading you and you're leading them on the walk, right? You're deciding where you go. So mix it up. Don't always make it the same walk. Change your pace. You can stop and start. You can change directions. You can teach them heel. And any of those things are going to be really helpful in asserting your leadership in this relationship. And lastly, limit their freedoms. So let's regain some control by taking back those things that they've just had unlimited access to. So even if that's just like they don't get access to the whole toy box all the time, you routinely give them a certain amount of toys that they can play with at certain times, and then put them away, and then put different ones out and then put them away. That just, again, it's just a little thing that really probably doesn't mean a lot in your mind, but it actually just helps the dog understand that you control those things that they care about, and so that you're the one to look to for those items. And that goes for food and their furniture as well. So you can just give them their meals through training sessions instead to kind of reassert your importance as their owner and their leader. And so why not just feed them a meal during that training session instead of giving them food for free? It just, again, encourages that focus on you, and they're going to be doubly focused on you because they're hungry. And at first, when you start limiting their freedoms, you're really going to want to remove their ability to be on the furniture overall. You kind of have to go back to square one, no furniture time. And once they're giving you good focus and attention and looking to you, that's when you can start to go back to, okay, now I'm going to invite you on the couch, and you can only come up when I say, when I pat the couch and say up or here or come. And you want to be really consistent with that no matter what, even if they just end up on the couch, if you see them on the couch, that you lead them off the couch with a treat or something, or you get them off the couch and have them go to their bed instead. And it's okay if, you designated this chair has their bed on it, or this is where their bed is, and that they get to go on, but not anything else. You can do that. But it's super important that at least your dog have the manners and the requirement of being invited up onto the furniture, so that, again, they have to look to you to be able to do the next thing, because that's going to help keep their attitude in check. And it's certainly a place where they have just gone, like, I decide, I own this place. I get to do what I want to do all the time. And you can imagine if your kid thought that, if you had a child that had that perspective, you wouldn't really want to spend much time with them, would you? Because they think they own the place and they can do anything, anytime, anywhere. Well, that is not what a well-behaved dog sounds like to me. So if you're seeing any of these behaviors in a potential dog that you're looking at rescuing, or, a friend's dog or anything like that, there are ways to curb it. Like, it's actually not that hard. Of course, it's easier to set these rules up and set this consistency and routine up from the get-go. So if you're bringing in a dog from a rescue situation, you're integrating it into your home, it's easiest to just from the get-go start like this. But if your dog has gotten like this, you've kind of gotten lax on some things, and they're starting to become a bit of a terror, you can turn this around. It's not too late. And your dog craves your leadership. Dogs aim to please, and they really do want us to tell them what to do and where to do it. And you can do that for your dog. And by creating that structure in your life, your dog will likely be a much happier dog in the end. And you're likely to be a happier dog owner too. If you know someone who has a small dog that's got a big attitude, maybe send this podcast their way, because there are some simple things that can really turn this dog's behavior around. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share this episode's link with one of your small dog owner friends, or post a screenshot to your Instagram or Facebook story while tagging @Pawdoption Guide. New episodes will be uploaded every other Thursday, and you can get in touch with me on social @Pawdoption Guide via Instagram or my Facebook page. Thanks again for listening. I'm so glad to have you here.